The December wind tore through the empty streets of Seoul like a blade wrapped in ice, carrying a cold that sank into skin and settled deep in the bones. Neon signs flickered and buzzed above snow-covered sidewalks, casting restless shadows across frozen pavement. Somewhere in the distance, a car horn wailed and faded into nothing. On a frost-covered bench at a deserted bus stop, a young woman sat hunched over, arms wrapped so tightly around herself she looked like she was trying to hold her own pieces together. Her bare feet, dark brown skin stark against white snow, were turning blue. No coat, no shoes, no way home. She looked like she was trying to disappear, like she wanted the winter night to swallow her whole. In her trembling hands, she clutched a broken cell phone, the screen cracked and dark. Service canceled. Frederick had made sure of that. It was all she had left, along with the clothes on her back and the shame that weighed heavier than any winter coat. Her name was Alicia, 29 years old, black woman alone in Korea, brown skin that made her visible in ways she'd never been back home, Korean signs she couldn't read surrounding her like accusations, a language she didn't speak echoing from passing strangers, a passport locked away in a drawer she'd never see again. Lately, her name didn't feel like hers, not after her husband screamed it at her like a curse. Broken, defective, worthless, before throwing her out the front door of their Seoul apartment and locking it behind her. That had been 6 hours ago, or maybe 7. Time had blurred into a fog she couldn't see through. The temperature had dropped below freezing. She had not eaten. She had nowhere to go. No embassy would be open at this hour. No shelter she could find without reading the signs. No friend in this foreign city where she'd moved for his business, where she'd isolated herself at his insistence, where she was utterly, completely alone. There's nothing left, she thought, fingers tightening around the broken phone until the cracked glass bit into her palm. Nothing worth fighting for. She didn't cry. Her tears had frozen somewhere between the apartment and this bench, turning to ice in her chest. The cold cut sharper. She pulled her thin cardigan tighter, but it didn't help. The cold was inside her now, in her bones, in her empty womb, in the hollow space where hope used to live. Then headlights appeared. A black Mercedes, sleek and silent, slowed at the corner, then stopped. The engine purred like a predator watching prey. The rear door opened. Footsteps approached, measured, unhurried. The crunch of expensive shoes on snow-packed concrete. And then a voice. Low, calm, speaking perfect English with the faintest Korean accent, dangerous in a way that wasn't threatening, just absolute. You're going to freeze to death out here. Before we continuing this thrilling story, don't forget to smash that subscribe button. Where are you watching from? Like and comment. Alicia didn't move, didn't look up. Her body had learned long ago that men who approached in the dark rarely brought anything good. But this voice didn't demand. It waited. Slowly, she lifted her head. The man stood a few feet away, tall, broad-shouldered, dark hair swept back from a face that looked like it had been carved from stone and softened only by exhaustion. His eyes, deep brown, almost black, held no pity, no judgment, just recognition. Like he knew exactly what it looked like to lose everything. He shrugged off his coat, a long black wool that probably cost more than a year of her old rent, and held it out to her. I'm not going to hurt you. She didn't take it. Her voice came out raw, barely a whisper. Why would you help me? He was quiet for a moment, his gaze dropping to her bare feet, blue against white snow, to the way she flinched even though he hadn't moved. Because I know what it looks like when someone's been thrown away, he said, and I know what it feels like to have nothing left to lose. He draped the coat over her shoulders without touching her. It was still warm. It smelled like sandalwood and something she couldn't name. Safety, maybe, or danger dressed up as kindness. My name is Woo Kai-ho. The name meant nothing to her, but the way he said it, like it carried weight in the city, made her spine straighten slightly. There's a place not far from here, he continued, his English flawless, American accented. Warm, safe. I have 3 children who need someone and you need somewhere to go. She stared at him, a stranger, a Korean man in an expensive suit with a black Mercedes idling behind him. This could be a trap. This could be worse than freezing. but she was already dying out here. At least this way, she'd die warm. "I'm not asking for anything," he said, reading her hesitation. "I'm offering you a door. You can walk through it, or you can stay here and let the cold finish what he started." Alicia looked down at her hands, still clutching the broken phone. She thought of Frederick, of the bathroom floor of the hospital room where they'd taken her womb and her hope in one procedure. She thought of her grandmother, who had raised her after her mother died, who had whispered to a teenage Alicia, "Baby girl, when you have nothing left, that's when you find out who you really are." She looked at the man standing in front of her. A stranger, a dangerous man, probably. A man who, for reasons she didn't understand, had stopped. And slowly, painfully, she stood. Her bare feet screamed against the frozen pavement. The coat fell heavy on her shoulders, warmer than anything she'd felt in hours. She didn't take his hand, but she followed. The restaurant was small, tucked into a narrow alley she would have walked past without seeing. Inside, warm yellow light spilled across wooden tables, and the air smelled of garlic and sesame oil and something fermented she couldn't identify. An elderly woman behind the counter looked up, saw Kaiho, and bowed so deeply Alicia thought she might fall over. Korean words flew fast between them. The woman kept glancing at Alicia, her dark skin, her bare feet, her obvious foreignness, but her expression held only concern. They sat at a corner table. Kaiho ordered without asking her opinion, speaking Korean that sounded both gentle and commanding. The food arrived in small metal bowls: rice, soup with vegetables she didn't recognize, something red and spicy smelling, pickled vegetables that made her nose wrinkle. And chopsticks. Metal chopsticks, heavier than the wooden ones she'd tried once at a fusion restaurant back in Atlanta. She stared at them, exhausted tears pricking her eyes. She couldn't even eat properly here. Kaiho said nothing. He simply began eating, his movements efficient, giving her space to figure it out or fail privately. Alicia picked up the chopsticks. They felt wrong in her hands, too heavy, too slippery. She tried to grip a piece of kimchi and it shot across the table. "Hold them like this," Kaiho demonstrated, his voice patient, adjusting his grip slightly. "The top one moves, the bottom stays still." She tried again, failed again. Her hands were shaking too badly from cold and exhaustion and shame. He reached across the table and switched her chopsticks for a spoon without comment, then went back to his own meal. Alicia ate the soup. It was hot and salty and the first food she'd had in 18 hours. She tried not to cry into it. The Merceds glided through streets she couldn't read, past signs in Hangul that might as well have been hieroglyphics. Alicia watched Seoul slide past the window, neon lights, late-night convenience stores, apartment buildings stacked like boxes, and felt herself disappearing further from everything she'd ever known. After 20 minutes, the car slowed and stopped before massive iron gates. 2 stone pillars rose into the night, security cameras perched at every angle like mechanical birds. A guard stepped out from a booth, saw the car, and bowed before hurrying to open the gate. This was not the home of a normal businessman. The car rolled forward down a long stone drive lined with bare trees and carefully maintained gardens, even in winter. Then the house came into view, not a house, a mansion. Traditional Korean architecture with curved rooflines and dark wood, but modernized with floor-to-ceiling windows and subtle lighting. 3 stories high with traditional tile roofs and modern security systems visible at every corner. It was beautiful, it was intimidating, it was completely alien. Kaiho opened the door and stepped out first. "You need to know," he said, his voice low and clear in the cold night. "You will be safe here. No one gets in without my permission. No one will hurt you." Alicia stepped out, her bare feet meeting cold stone. She looked up at the house, then at the men in black positioned throughout the grounds, their eyes sliding over her before turning away. The front door opened before they reached the steps. A woman stood there, middle-aged, sturdy build, black hair threaded with gray pulled back in a neat bun. She wore simple clothes, black pants and a cream sweater, and her round face held a stern expression that softened when she saw Alicia's bare feet. "This is Mrs. Park," Kaiho said. She runs everything in this house." Then he spoke to the woman in Korean, gesturing to Alicia. Mrs. Park's eyes widened slightly, then she nodded and spoke in careful, accented English. "Welcome, you, cold, come." She stepped aside, and Alicia walked into warmth. The entryway was vast, polished wood floors, low furniture with clean lines, art on the walls that looked ancient and priceless. But what struck her most was the silence. No laughter, no music, no signs of life, just beautiful, expensive emptiness. Mrs. Park gestured for her to remove her shoes, except Alicia had none to remove. Her bare feet looked small and dark against the pale wood floor. They climbed stairs and moved down a long corridor. Mrs. Park stopped at a door near the end, opened it, and stepped aside. The room was simple but elegant. A low platform bed with white bedding, a small table by the window, rice paper screens that diffused the light into something soft and golden. The floor was warm beneath her feet, heated somehow from below. "Andal," Mrs. Park said, pointing down. "Floor heat, Korean style." She opened another door, revealing a bathroom with a deep soaking tub. "Bath, warm water." She pointed to folded clothes on a shelf. "Sleep clothes, tomorrow we talk more." Then she paused, looking at Alicia with something that might have been understanding. "You safe here," she said carefully. "Mr. Wu, good man, children need, someone kind." She bowed slightly and left, closing the door softly behind her. Alicia stood alone in the unfamiliar room. She walked to the window, looked out at a garden she couldn't see clearly in the dark, at a city where she didn't speak the language, in a country where her skin marked her as foreign everywhere she went. She went to the bathroom. The light was harsh and bright, and the mirror showed her what she'd become, a walking skeleton. Hair matted and tangled, face hollow, lips cracked and bleeding. The absence of her stomach showed even through her clothes, the flatness where a child should have grown. This was what Frederick had made her. This was what remained. And for the first time since that morning, Alicia cried. Not with sobs. She was too tired for that, only tears sliding down in silence, unstoppable, like something breaking after being held together too long. She cried for the Bobbies who would never be born. She cried for her grandmother who'd died 2 years ago. She cried for the young woman who'd believed Frederick when he said he loved her. She cried for being alone in a foreign country, unable even to ask for help in the language. She cried until the tears stopped on their own, until there was nothing left. Then she showered. The water was hot, almost scalding, washing away bus station grime and street dirt and the cold that had sunk into her bones. She stood under the spray until her brown skin flushed darker with heat, until the small bathroom filled with steam. When she stepped out, she found the sleep clothes Mrs. Park had left, soft cotton pants and a loose shirt, both too big but clean and warm. She put them on, feeling the fabric settle against her skin like a whisper. She climbed into the bed, the first real bed in 6 hours, and felt the warmth from the heated floor rising up through the mattress. The pillow was firm, Korean style, different from what she was used to, but it cradled her head. For the first time in so long, she felt safe. Temporarily, maybe. In a country where she didn't belong, maybe, but safe. And from somewhere deep in her chest, a sound emerged. Quiet at first, then stronger. A melody her grandmother had taught her, words she'd sung in church back in Atlanta, back when she still believed God listened. "His eye is on the sparrow, and I know he watches me." Her voice cracked and wavered, but she sang anyway, the gospel hymn echoing through the unfamiliar Korean mansion, a piece of home in a foreign land. And in the warm darkness of the room, Alicia closed her eyes and let sleep take her. Alicia woke to unfamiliar silence and golden light filtering through rice paper screens. For 3 disorienting seconds, she didn't know where she was. Then it came rushing back, soul, snow, a stranger's mercy, a house that felt like a museum. She found clothes laid out on the chair, simple black pants and a soft gray sweater, still too big but clean. Her feet were bare again, but at least the floor was warm. The smell of food drew her downstairs. Mrs. Park stood at the kitchen counter, arranging small dishes with careful precision. She looked up and smiled, gesturing to the table. Breakfast, sit. Alicia sat. The table was covered with small metal bowls, white rice, bright red kimchi, grilled fish with its head still attached, soup with seaweed floating in it, and several dishes she couldn't identify. No bread, no eggs, no coffee. She swallowed her disappointment and reached for the rice. Good morning. Kai-ho appeared in the doorway, dressed in a crisp white shirt and dark pants, looking more rested than he had last night. He spoke to Mrs. Park in Korean, then turned to Alicia. The children will be down soon. They know you're here. Before she could ask what he'd told them, she heard it. The thunder of feet on stairs, the high voices of children arguing in Korean. 3 children burst into the kitchen and stopped dead. The oldest, a boy with sharp features and Kai-ho's serious eyes, stared at her with something between shock and suspicion. The middle child, a girl with long black hair and enormous brown eyes, went completely still, half hidden behind her brother. The youngest, a small boy with round cheeks and a gap-toothed smile, tilted his head like a curious puppy. The silence stretched too long. Then the oldest boy spoke, his English heavily accented but clear. Why is she black? Minjun, Kai-ho's voice was sharp. But the boy continued, something ugly flickering in his young face. We don't need another foreigner here. Foreigners bring trouble. Foreigners. That's enough. Minjun clenched his jaw, bowed stiffly to his father, and sat at the far end of the table, as far from Alicia as possible. The little girl said nothing. She just stared at Alicia with those huge eyes, unblinking, like she was seeing a ghost. The youngest boy walked straight up to Alicia and reached out, touching her arm with curious fingers. Different, he said in Korean, then giggled. His sister gasped softly. Yi-sun, manners, Mrs. Park scolded gently. But Alicia smiled despite everything. It's okay, she looked at the little boy. Yes, different. Yi-sun grinned wider and climbed into the chair next to her, swinging his legs that didn't reach the floor. Breakfast was awkward. Minjun ate in hostile silence, shooting dark glances at Alicia between bites. The girl, Haewon, Mrs. Park called her, touched nothing, just stared at her bowl. Yi-sun chattered in Korean, occasionally pointing at Alicia and saying words she didn't understand. When Alicia tried to use her chopsticks and dropped rice down her shirt, Yi-sun burst into laughter. Even Haewon's lips twitched slightly. Minjun just scowled harder. After breakfast, Mrs. Park began what Alicia would come to know as patient, endless cultural instruction. Shoes off at the door always. Bow when greeting elders like this, hands together, back straight. Don't point with one finger, use whole hand. Don't stick chopsticks upright in rice, bad luck, looks like funeral incense. The children watched her struggle. When she bowed too low and nearly fell over, Yi-sun giggled. When she tried to say thank you in Korean, Gamsahamnida, and butchered the pronunciation so badly it sounded like Kamsahamnida. Even Haewon's eyes sparkled with suppressed amusement. Wrong, Minjun said coldly in English. You'll never learn, too hard for foreigners. But Mrs. Park just smiled and repeated the words slowly, carefully, until Alicia got closer. By afternoon, Alicia's head ached from trying to remember rules she didn't understand in a language that felt impossible. Yi-sun followed her everywhere, touching her hair, her hands, chattering at her in Korean while she nodded and smiled, understanding nothing. Haewon watched from doorways, never speaking, never coming close but never quite leaving either. And Minjun disappeared into his room, door closed, silence absolute. That evening, Mrs. Park found Alicia trying to wash dishes the American way, standing at the sink with soap and water. No, Mrs. Park gently took the sponge. Korean way. Rinse first, soap second, rinse again, different. Different. Everything here was different. Mrs. Park must have seen something in her face because she paused, her kind eyes crinkling at the corners. Hard, yes. New country, new way, but you learn. Children learn you too. Minjun hates me. Mrs. Park sighed. Minjun hate everyone since mother die, you not special. She smiled sadly. But you here, you stay, that different. Other people leave when he mean, you stay. Alicia looked toward the stairs, where 3 children slept in rooms she hadn't seen yet. 3 children whose mother had died. 3 children whose father had stopped for a freezing stranger. "I stay," she said quietly. "I have nowhere else to go." Mrs. Park patted her hand. "Good start. Tomorrow you learn more. Children learn you. Time heal many things." That night, Alicia lay in her warm room and thought about 3 wounded hearts she'd met today. A boy who hurt people before they could hurt him. A girl who'd forgotten how to speak. A little boy who touched darkness to make sure it was real. And she thought, maybe we can heal each other. Maybe that's why I'm here. Outside, Soul hummed with life in a language she couldn't speak, in a country where her skin made her visible, in a house where she didn't belong. But she was here, and for now, that would have to be enough. The crying woke her at 2 a.m., small, strangled sounds, like someone trying to swallow their own grief. Alicia threw off the blanket and followed the sound down the hall. Haewon's door was cracked open, dim nightlight spilling into the corridor. Inside, the 7-year-old sat upright in bed, tears streaming silently down her face, arms wrapped around a pillow, body shaking. "Haewon," Alicia stepped inside carefully. The girl looked at her with those enormous eyes, wet and terrified, but said nothing. Her mouth opened, closed, no sound emerging. Alicia didn't touch her. She'd learned that much. Some wounds were too raw for contact. Instead, she sat on the floor beside the bed, keeping distance, keeping space. And she began to sing. "Why should I feel discouraged? Why should the shadows come?" Her voice was soft, untrained, but the melody was pure. The gospel hymn her grandmother had sung over scraped knees and broken hearts and nights when the world felt too big and cruel. "His eye is on the sparrow, and I know he watches me." Haewon's crying slowed, her breathing evened, and then, so quietly Alicia almost missed it, a sound. A hum. The girl was humming along, matching the melody without words, finding comfort in music that transcended language. Alicia kept singing until Haewon's eyes closed, until her breathing deepened into sleep, until the nightmare released its grip. In the morning, Alicia found Haewon standing in the kitchen doorway, watching her eat breakfast. The girl walked forward slowly, stopped inches away, and whispered in careful English. "Pretty song." 2 words, the first she'd spoken in 2 years. Mrs. Park's hand flew to her mouth. Kai-ho, reading the newspaper, looked up sharply, something breaking across his face. Alicia smiled, tears threatening. "Thank you, sweetheart." Haewon nodded once and ran away, but it was a beginning. That afternoon, Alicia found Min-jun in the garden, sitting on a stone bench beneath a bare cherry tree, staring at his phone. On the screen was a photo, a beautiful Korean woman with long black hair, holding a small boy, both of them laughing. He looked up when her shadow fell across him, and his expression hardened instantly. "What do you want?" "Nothing." Alicia sat on the opposite end of the bench, not close enough to threaten. "Just getting air." "You don't belong here." His English was precise, cutting. "You're just another foreigner who will leave when things get hard, like all the others." "Maybe." He blinked, surprised she didn't argue. "Or maybe," Alicia continued quietly, "I understand what it's like to not belong anywhere." She pushed up her sleeve, showing the scars on her wrist, faint white lines against brown skin. "You see these? I got them being different my whole life. Wrong color, wrong background, wrong body." She touched her stomach. "They threw me away too, Min-jun, just like you think I'll throw you away." Min-jun stared at the scars, something shifting in his young face. "I don't know Korean," Alicia said. "I don't understand the bowing, the shoes, the chopsticks. I mess up every single day, but I'm still here, and I'm not leaving because your anger is loud. I've survived worse than a 10-year-old boy's mean words." Silence stretched between them. Then, so quietly she almost missed it. "She died because of him, because of what he is, what we are." "I know," Mrs. Park told me. "Everyone leaves. Everyone sees what we are and they leave. I'm still here." Min-jun looked at her fully for the first time, really looked, seeing perhaps not just a foreign woman but someone who understood loss. "You really can't have children." "No," And your father told me you lost your mother. We're both missing something, aren't we? He didn't answer, but that night, when Elijah passed his room, the door wasn't slammed shut. It was cracked open, just an inch, but open. Progress. The next morning, Yi-sun appointed himself her Korean teacher with the earnest authority only a 5-year-old could muster. He pointed at objects around the house, speaking slowly, delighted when she repeated incorrectly. Mull, he said, holding up water. Mool, Elijah tried. Mull. Mull. Yi-sun dissolved into giggles, and even Haewon smiled from her watching post by the door. Apple, Elijah said, holding up the fruit. Sagwa, Yi-sun shouted triumphantly. And slowly, word by word, laugh by laugh, the walls began to crack. They found each other in the kitchen at midnight, both chasing sleep that wouldn't come. Kai-ho stood by the window, a glass of whiskey in his hand, staring at the dark garden. He didn't seem surprised when Elijah appeared. Can't sleep either. His voice was tired in a way that had nothing to do with the hour. Too quiet here. Back home there was always noise, traffic, neighbors, something. She poured herself water. The silence is louder. He smiled faintly. I know that silence, the one that screams. They stood in the dark kitchen, two strangers bound by invisible wounds, until Kai-ho spoke again. My wife, her name was Seo-jin. She died 2 years ago. His hand tightened on the glass. They were aiming for me, rival gang. She was in the wrong place or the right place, depending on how you see it. Took the bullet meant for my chest. Elijah's breath caught. The children saw. Min-jun did. He was 8. Watched her bleed out on the sidewalk while I held her. His voice cracked slightly. I killed the men who did it, every single one, but it didn't bring her back. I'm sorry. And you, he turned to face her. What did your husband do to make you choose freezing to death over going back? The words came easier in darkness. 4 miscarriages. Then they took my womb, emergency hysterectomy after the last one. Frederick said I was defective, broken, that I'd failed at the one thing a wife was supposed to do. She touched her stomach unconsciously. He threw me out like garbage because I couldn't give him children. Kai-ho's jaw clenched. He's a fool. Why did you stop that night? Really? He was quiet for a long moment. You reminded me of her. Not how you look, how you sat. Seo-jin used to sit like that when the world got too heavy, trying to hold herself together with just her arms. He looked at her directly. I thought maybe if I couldn't save my wife, I could save someone else, honor her memory by doing what she would have done. Something passed between them, recognition across cultural divides, shared understanding of loss. Thank you, Elijah whispered, for stopping. The next evening, voices pulled Elijah from her room, tense, angry Korean mixed with sharp English from Kai-ho's office. She crept closer, heard words like territory, Morty, payment, blood. When the door opened, 4 men in black suits emerged, bowing to Kai-ho. Their eyes swept over Elijah with cold assessment before they left. Mrs. Park found her in the kitchen, trembling. You understand now, the housekeeper said gently. What he is, what this family is. Mafia. Mrs. Park nodded. Wu family protect Dongdaemun district 3 generations. Mr. Kai-ho, he not choose this life, born into it, but he protect his people, protect what his. And if I stay, I'm in danger. Yes, always danger here. Elijah looked toward the stairs where 3 children slept. Min-jun's door cracked open now. Haewon speaking 2 words. Yi-sun teaching her Korean with sticky hands and bright laughter. She thought of Frederick, of Atlanta, of a life that had thrown her away. And she thought of here, dangerous, foreign, alien, but where 3 broken children needed someone to stay. I have nowhere else to go, she said quietly, and they need someone. Mrs. Park smiled. Something like approval in her eyes. Good, you stay for them, that enough reason. It would have to be. Winter melted into early spring, and Elijah learned to belong. The kitchen became their bridge. Mrs. Park taught her to make kimchi jjigae, her patient hands guiding Elijah's through the rhythm of Korean cooking. In return, Alicia introduced soul food, mac and cheese, cornbread, collard greens simmering with ham hock. Yi-sun's face when he tasted mac and cheese was pure wonder. Cheese, noodles, heaven. Even Minjun took seconds, though he pretended not to enjoy it. They made kimchi together one Saturday, Alicia's hands burning from the gochugaru pepper flakes, and she taught them, "This little light of mine," their voices mixing Korean and English in chaotic harmony. Haewon sang the loudest, her selective mutism crumbling with each passing week. Movie nights became ritual. They watched Black Panther with Korean subtitles, Yi-sun bouncing on the couch. "Like Uma," he shouted in Korean when Akoi appeared. "Strong and beautiful." Alicia's heart cracked open. She found herself washing dishes beside Kaiho late at night, their conversations flowing easier now. His world, her world, the space they were building between. Their hands touched passing plates, lingering a heartbeat longer each time. For Chuseok, Mrs. Park dressed Alicia in a hanbok, deep blue silk with pink trim. "You family now," she said firmly. "You wear family clothes." Alicia stood before the ancestral shrine, bowing with the children, feeling honored to be included in something sacred. When traditional music played, she responded instinctively with a gospel hum, and somehow the melodies wove together, Korean drums and black church rhythms finding common ground. Kaiho taught her piano in the evenings, his hands covering hers on the keys, guiding her through a Korean folk song, his breath warm against her ear. "Like this, feel the rhythm." She felt more than rhythm. The children noticed. At dinner, Yi-sun asked something in rapid Korean that made Mrs. Park cough into her napkin. "What did he say?" Alicia asked. Mrs. Park's eyes twinkled. "He asked, is Uma going to marry Appa?" Alicia's face burned. Kaiho suddenly found his rice fascinating. The children dissolved into giggles. "Yi-sun," Minjun hissed, but he was smiling, actually smiling. Later, Alicia caught herself thinking in Korean, simple phrases, household words, the children's voices echoing in her head. She dreamed in Hangul sometimes, woke up saying, "Ka chuun anus, ka achim anus," instead of "good morning." Seoul was becoming home. This family was becoming hers. And the dangerous, complicated man who'd saved her was becoming something she couldn't name yet, something that terrified and thrilled her in equal measure. Mrs. Park watched them all with knowing eyes and said nothing, just smiled into her tea like she'd seen this story before and knew exactly how it would end. The message arrived on a Tuesday, slipped under the gate in a cream envelope. "Found you. I'm coming for what's mine." Alicia's hands shook so badly she dropped it. Kaiho picked it up, read it, and his face went cold as winter stone. Security doubled overnight, but the children needed normalcy, needed sun and air. So when Yi-sun begged to go to the park, Kaiho agreed, with 4 bodyguards in casual clothes scattered throughout the grounds. Frederick found her anyway. He appeared near the playground in an expensive gray suit, that familiar smug smile on his face like he owned the world, like he still owned her. "Alicia," his voice carried across the grass, drawing stares. "We need to talk." She froze. Every instinct screamed run, but her feet wouldn't move. Frederick walked closer, his smile sharpening. "So you're spreading your legs for some Asian gangster now, trading up from your American husband to foreign money." The bodyguards moved in, but Kaiho was faster, stepping between them with controlled fury. "You need to leave, now." Frederick laughed, looking Kaiho up and down with naked contempt. "Cute Korean kids," he said, glancing toward where Minjun held Yi-sun's hand protectively. "Wonder what immigration would think about an illegal foreign nanny. Wonder what the U.S. authorities would think about your business operations." "You're making a mistake," Kaiho said quietly, dangerously. The only mistake was hers. Frederick locked eyes with Alicia. "You belong to me, always will." The drive home was silent except for Yi-sun's quiet crying. Minjun held his little brother, his young face hard with an anger too old for 10. "Will that bad man hurt us?" he asked in English, looking at Alicia. "Like the ones who hurt our real Uma." No, Kaiho said firmly. I won't let him. But the threats escalated. Flowers arrived with notes. You belong to me. Emails with photos of the children at school, time-stamped and precise. A private investigator's report delivered to the house, photos of Alicia and Kaiho in the garden, their hands touching, laughing together. Frederick was watching everything. That night, Alicia sat at the dinner table, barely touching her food. The children watched her with frightened eyes. Minjun stood suddenly, fists clenched. Ko gunyanun enus, ko uri enus, ko ammaya enus, he said fiercely in Korean, then switched to English. She's our Uma now, we protect her. Haewon's voice came clear and strong, full sentences for the first time since her mother died. Don't let him take her away. Please, Appa, she stays with us. Yi-sun climbed into Alicia's lap, wrapping small arms around her neck. My Uma, he whispered. Not his, ours. Alicia held him tight, tears streaming. These children, who'd lost so much, who'd been taught that love meant leaving, were choosing her, fighting for her. And she would fight for them too. Whatever it took. Kaiho found her on the bathroom floor at 2 a.m., knees pulled to chest, shoulders shaking with silent sobs. He didn't speak. He just sat beside her on the cold tile, his presence solid and steady, the way he'd been that first night in the snow. I brought danger here, Alicia whispered finally. To your children, to your home, I should leave. No. He'll hurt them because of me. No one hurts what's mine. Kaiho's voice was steel wrapped in silk. Tell me everything, all of it. So she did. 4 years of psychological warfare, Frederick controlling every dollar, every friendship, keeping her passport locked away. Blaming her for each miscarriage like her body was a weapon she'd used against him. Refusing to let her see specialists until the damage was irreversible, until emergency surgery took her womb and her hope in one brutal procedure. He said I wasn't worth the medical bills, she finished, voice breaking. Said I was defective merchandise. Kaiho's hands clenched into fists. When he spoke, his voice was cold enough to freeze blood. He will never touch you again. I swear it on my life, on my children's lives, on everything I am. He reached up, removed the heavy signet ring from his finger, the Wu family crest, symbol of protection and power, and threaded it onto a silver chain. He placed it around her neck with hands that trembled slightly. You wear my family's protection now. No one harms what belongs to the Wu family. Alicia touched the ring, still warm from his skin. What are you going to do? I can make him disappear, completely. No body, no trace, Korean solution. His eyes were dark, dangerous. Say the word. She was tempted. God, she was tempted. But she shook her head. I want to beat him the right way. I want my dignity back through truth, not violence. Can you understand that? Kaiho studied her face, then nodded slowly. I can understand that, and I will help you. The attorney was a Korean woman named Park Jae-woo who'd studied at Georgetown, sharp-eyed and brilliant. She listened to everything, then smiled coldly. We'll bury him legally, much more satisfying than a bullet. They gathered evidence across 2 continents. Medical records showing Frederick's refusal of care. Financial documents proving his control. The diary Alicia had kept, hidden in Frederick's own apartment, recording every cruelty in careful detail. Witnesses emerged, Frederick's business partners whom Kaiho's people contacted, revealing embezzlement, fraud, a house of cards built on stolen money. Mrs. Park taught Alicia legal Korean vocabulary. The children helped her practice testimony, Yi-sun playing mean lawyer with adorable ferocity. Why you can't have baby? He demanded in English. Because my ex-husband refused me medical care when I needed it, Alicia answered steadily. Minjun watched from the doorway, something fierce and protective in his young face. You're going to win, Uma. We'll make sure. And for the first time, Alicia believed him. The hanbok-inspired suit was deep blue silk with subtle embroidery, modern cut, traditional respect. Mrs. Park had insisted. You show them, Korean now, American strong, both. The Seoul International Court was all marble and glass. flags from multiple nations hanging in silent judgment. Frederick sat at the defense table in his expensive gray suit, surrounded by lawyers, radiating confidence. He smiled when he saw her, that old, possessive smile. His attorney spoke first, voice smooth as poison. My client's wife, yes, they are still legally married, suffered a mental breakdown after her infertility issues. She abandoned him, fled to Korea, and is now being manipulated by a known criminal. Frederick took the stand, playing the wounded husband perfectly. I loved her, tried to help her through the miscarriages. She couldn't handle it, became unstable. I came here to bring her home, to get her help. Then Alicia was called. She walked to the stand in her blue silk, Kai-ho's family ring hanging at her throat, and swore to tell the truth in both English and Korean. Tell us about your marriage, Attorney Park Jae-woo said gently. Alicia spoke. 4 years of control, every dollar monitored, every friend discouraged, her passport locked away. The miscarriages Frederick blamed on her defective body. His refusal to let her see specialists until emergency surgery stole her womb. The night he threw her out barefoot into Seoul winter, calling her worthless, broken, not worth keeping. Her voice never wavered. Evidence mounted like stones building a wall, medical records, financial documents showing his absolute control, diary entries in her own hand, recording years of psychological warfare. Witnesses testified. Frederick's business partners revealed embezzlement, his empire built on fraud. Friends from Atlanta described her isolation, how Frederick had systematically cut her off from everyone. Mrs. Park took the stand, speaking careful English. Miss Alicia heal my family. She kind, patient, strong. She stay when others leave. She real mother to children now. The children sat in the gallery, hands linked, Minjun, Haewon, Yisun, allowed under Korean law. Their presence a silent declaration, she's ours. Frederick's composure cracked when the fraud charges were detailed. He stood suddenly, face red, pointing at Alicia. She's just a broken black woman. She's worthless. She can't even have children. She belongs to me. His voice rose to a shout. And now she's spreading her legs for some Asian gangster who doesn't even. The judge's gavel cracked like thunder. Security moved in, but Frederick kept screaming, racist slurs pouring out, his true nature finally visible to everyone. The judge spoke in Korean first, then English, voice cold with contempt. Guilty, coercive control, financial fraud, immigration violations, 5 years imprisonment in the United States, all assets frozen, permanent restraining order, extradition ordered immediately. Frederick's face went white as they cuffed him. As they let him past, he spat at her feet. You'll always be that broken black woman nobody wanted. Alicia stood tall, Kai-ho beside her, children behind her, and spoke in clear Korean. I am whole, and I am chosen. Then in English, her voice ringing through the courtroom. You never owned me. You never knew me. In the hallway, she collapsed. Not from weakness, but from release, tears streaming, body shaking as 4 years of captivity shattered like glass. The children surrounded her. Minjun knelt down, spoke in English. You won, Uma. Haewon sang softly. His eye is on the sparrow, her voice clear and sure. Yisun wrapped small arms around her neck. Our Uma is strong, like superhero. And Alicia held them all, finally, completely free. Outside the courthouse, cameras flashed like lightning. International media had gathered. Black woman, Korean Mafia boss, cross-cultural justice. The story had everything. Reporters shouted questions in English and Korean. Before Alicia could speak, Minjun stepped forward, 10 years old and fierce as a dragon. She's our mother, he declared in English, then Korean, then English again. She chose us and we chose her. That's all you need to know. Haewon took Alicia's hand, her voice clear for the cameras. Our Uma stayed. She's family now. Yisun just hugged her legs and wouldn't let go. Spring deepened into summer. They worked in the garden together, Kai-ho teaching her Korean poetry while dirt stained their hands. She taught him African American history, the part schools didn't cover, the resilience and resistance and joy. They cooked fusion meals that made Mrs. Park shake her head in amused despair. Kimchi mac and cheese, bulgogi tacos, cornbread with gochujang butter. Their laughter mixed languages now, cultural jokes only they understood. The children became increasingly less subtle. Yi-sun drew wedding pictures daily. Haewon composed a song in 2 languages. Min-jun coached Kai-ho on English romantic phrases with the seriousness of a general planning war. Late one evening, Kai-ho asked Alicia to walk with him to the family garden, where Seo-jin was memorialized, a small stone monument beneath cherry blossoms. "I asked her blessing," he said quietly in Korean, then English. "Traditional way, to honor her memory before moving forward." Alicia's throat tightened. "What did you say?" "That I've been alone too long, that you brought light back to our darkness." He turned to face her fully. "I love you." He knelt, producing a ring modern design with traditional jade. "Be my partner, my children's mother, my family. Will you marry me?" Before she could answer, 3 children burst from behind the monument, holding a scroll they'd written together. English on one side, Korean on the other, a petition requesting she officially become their Ummah forever. "We've been planning this for weeks," Min-jun admitted, grinning. Alicia laughed through tears. She said, "Yes," then in Korean, "I am home." The wedding blended everything they were. Alicia wore a white hanbok with African print accents sewn into the silk. Kai-ho wore traditional Korean robes with kente cloth trim. A gospel choir sang while Korean drums thundered. Both families, both worlds woven together. Min-jun presented a bracelet engraved in both languages. "Family forever." Haewon sang her bilingual song, her first public performance, voice strong and clear. Yi-sun gave a drawing, 5 figures in front of the mansion, labeled "Our Family." They spoke vows in both languages, honored rituals from both cultures. The reception served Seoul food and Korean cuisine side by side, music shifting seamlessly from gospel to K-pop to jazz. Later, Alicia stood in the garden wearing her hanbok casually now, watching the children play, Min-jun teaching Yi-sun taekwondo, Haewon singing to herself in English. She touched her stomach, the flatness no longer a source of shame. "I couldn't give birth," she whispered in Korean, then English. "But I gave life, to myself, to them, and they gave life to me." She looked at the mansion glowing with light, at Kai-ho watching her with love in his eyes, at 3 children who'd chosen her as fiercely as she'd chosen them. Sometimes being discarded is the first step toward being chosen. Sometimes the worst winter leads to the warmest spring. Sometimes home is not where you're born, but where you're brave enough to stay. And Alicia, once broken, now whole, had finally found hers. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like, share this video, and subscribe for more stories that speak to the heart. Where in the world are you turning in from? Let me know in the comments so we can connect and share our thoughts. I appreciate the time you spent here with me today.